Welcome. My name is Anthony Nicoli, and we're reading Joseph Campbell's Primitive Mythology, Chapter 2, Section 2, The Structuring Force of Life on Earth. Certainly, one force that can never have been absent from human experience, as Adolf Portman has pointed out in a suggestive paper on the Earth as the home of life, is gravity, which not only works continuously on every aspect of human affairs, but has fundamentally conditioned the form of the body and all its organs. The diurnal alternation of light and dark is another ineluctable factor of experience, to which indeed considerable dramatic value accrues as a result of the fact that at night the world sleeps, dangers lurk, and the mind plunges into a realm of dream experience which differs in its logic from the world of light. In dream, objects shine of themselves without illumination from without, and moreover are of a subtle substance that is capable of magical and rapid transformation, appalling effects and non-mechanical locomotion. There can be no doubt but that the world of myth has been saturated by dream, or that men were dreaming even when they were little more than apes. And as Geza Roheim has observed, there cannot be several culturally determined ways of dreaming, just as there are no two ways of sleeping. Dawn and awakening from this world of dream must always have been associated with the sun and sunrise. The night fears and night charms are dispelled by light, which has always been experienced as coming from above and as furnishing guidance and orientation. Darkness, then, and weight, the pull of gravity, and the dark interior of the earth, of the jungle, or of the deep sea, as well as certainly extremely poignant fears and delights, must for millenniums have constituted a firm syndrome of human experience, in contrast to the luminous flight of the world-awakening solar sphere into and through immeasurable heights. Hence a polarity of light and dark, above and below, guidance and loss of bearings, confidence and fears, a polarity that we all know from our own tradition of thought and feeling and can find matched in many parts of the world, must be reckoned as inevitable in the way of a structuring principle of human thought. It may or may not be fixed within us as an isomorph, but in any case, it is certainly a general and very deeply known experience. The moon, furthermore, and the spectacle of the night sky, the stars in the Milky Way, have constituted certainly from the beginning a source of wonder and profound impression. But there is actually a physical influence of the moon upon the earth and its creatures, its tides and our own interior tides, which has long been consciously recognized as well as subliminally experienced. The coincidence of the menstrual cycle with that of the moon is a physical actuality structuring human life and a curiosity that has been observed with wonder. It is in fact likely that the fundamental notion of a life-structuring relationship between the heavenly world and that of man was derived from the realization, both in experience and in thought, of the force of the lunar cycle. The mystery also of the death and resurrection of the moon, as well as of its influence on dogs, wolves, foxes, jackals, and coyotes, which try to sing to it, this immortal silver dish of wonder, cruising among the beautiful stars and racing through the clouds, turning waking life itself into a sort of dream, has been a force and presence even more powerful in the shaping of mythology than the sun. by which its light and its world of stars, night sounds, erotic moods, and the magic of dream are daily quenched. The contrast in physical form and spheres of competence of the male and female surely is another universal human experience, and we must reckon also in this context with the instinct crossing between the two, which makes possible, or rather inevitable, and sometimes even against better judgment, the awakening of the two bodies in synchronization to that curious mutual engagement which the Freudians like to call a reenactment of the primal scene, and which many have found to be the one consummation of appetite most difficult to resist. In a number of meticulous studies of animal behavior, it has been shown that a trimly meshed sequence of sign stimuli, flashed from the male organism to the female, and from the female to the male, can be identified as releasers of the sometimes exceedingly complicated performances that must be undertaken in perfect synchronization before the species can be reproduced. And I do not know anyone outside of the most carefully schooled scientific circles who would suppose, for a moment, that a comparable crisscross of isomorphs might not safely be assumed to exist on the human level as well. But since nothing is to be assumed recklessly on the basis of merely personal experience, and no one has yet been able to raise two young human beings in absolute isolation from social conditioning and introduce them to each other when the moon is full, we shall not presume to say how much of what everyone knows about this matter is due to imprint, or how much to inherited image. Let us remark only that the perfumes of flowers, the beautification of the body, night, secret meetings, music, token exchanges, anguish, remorse, rivalry, jealousy, murder, and the whole opera can be identified in human history as far as our eyes can see. And we have the voluminous literature of the Freudian school to assure us that the covert as well as obvious analogies, puns, and inflections by which sex, the sex organs, and the sexual act are implicated in our thoughts are known to every tradition in the world, whether oral or literate. In mythology, of course, the image of birth from the womb is an extremely common figure for the origin of the universe, and the sexual intercourse that must have preceded it is represented in a ritual action as well as in story. Furthermore, the mysterious, one might even say magical, functioning of the female body in its menstrual cycle, in the ceasing of the cycle during the period of gestation, and in the agony of birth, and then the appearance then of the new being, these certainly have made profound imprints on the mind. The fear of menstrual blood and isolation of women during their periods, the rites of birth, and all the lore of magic associated with human fecundity make it evident that we are here in the field of one of the major centers of interest of the human imagination. In the earliest ritual art, the naked female form is extremely prominent, whereas the male is usually ornamented or masked as shaman or hunter in the performance of some act. The fear of woman and the mystery of her motherhood have been for the male no less impressive imprinting forces than the fears and mysteries of the world of nature itself. And there may be found in the mythologies and ritual traditions of our entire species innumerable instances of the unrelenting efforts of the male to relate himself effectively, in the way, so to say, of antagonistic cooperation, to these two alien yet intimately constraining forces. Woman and the world. Still another profoundly important structuring system of experiences that can be said without question to constitute a pattern of imprints on our own readiness for life is that of the normal stages of human growth and emotional susceptibility. From the moment of birth to that of death and the stench of decay. A great deal of excellent writing on this subject has been produced recently by the various authorities on child psychology and psychoanalysis, so that to review the whole matter in detail would be only to repeat what is already very well known. However, I am not aware of any work that has yet drawn attention in systematic series to the mythological motifs developed from the imprints of this sociologized biology of human growth. As we have noted, it requires 20 years for the human organism to mature, and during the greater part of this development it is dependent utterly upon parental care. There follows a period of another 20 years or so of maturity, after which the signs of age begin to appear. But the human being is the only animal capable of knowing death as the end inevitable for itself, and the span of old age for this human organism, consciously facing death, is a period of years longer than the whole lifetime of any other primate. So we see at least three, distinct periods of growth and susceptibility to imprint as inevitable in a human biography. 1. Childhood and youth, with its uncouth charm. 2. Maturity, with its competence and authority. And 3. Wise old age, nursing its own death and gazing back, either with love or with rancor, at the fading world. It has been the chief function of much of the mythological lore and ritual practice of our species to carry the mind, feelings, and powers of action of the individual across the critical thresholds from the 2 decades of infancy to adulthood, and from old age to death, to supply the sign stimuli adequate to release the life energies of the one who is no longer what he was for his new task, to the new phase, in a manner appropriate to the well-being of the group. And so we find, on the one hand, as a constant factor in these rites of passage, the inevitable and therefore universal requirements of the human individual at the particular junctures, and on the other hand, as a cultural variable, the historically conditioned requirements and beliefs of the local group. This gives that interesting quality of seeming to be ever the same, though ever changing, to the kaleidoscope of world mythology, which may charm our poets and artists, but is a nightmare for the mind that seeks to classify. And yet, with a steady eye, even the phantasmagoria of a nightmare can be catalogued to a degree. The remaining sections of the present chapter develop, therefore, in the way of a tentative preliminary sketch, the main lines and phases of what would appear to have been, up to the present moment at least, the chief sources of imprint in the course of the archetypal biography of man. We'll stop there for today. Next time, we'll be reading section 3, the imprints of early infancy. Thank you for joining me, and enjoy your day.